2021 promises to be a fruitful year for ESA and the European space industry. This year will see the launch of a new and innovative telecommunications satellite called Quantum, developed through a public-private partnership with Eutelsat. Quantum is the first satellite that can be reprogrammed in orbit for maximum flexibility. Another first in 2021 will be the maiden flight of Vega C. This new iteration of the Vega launcher is more powerful and allows for larger and heavier payloads than the current Vega, with which it will share a launch pad. Vega C's third stage motor will also be used as a strap-on booster for Europe's new heavy lift launcher, Ariane 6. The development of Ariane 6 will continue in 2021, working towards the launcher's inaugural flight in 2022. Through clever design, both Vega C and Ariane 6 will be cost-efficient and reliable launch vehicles ready to compete in the worldwide launcher market, confirming Europe as a frontrunner in spaceflight, while also securing independent access to space for Europe. Exciting news for Galileo, Europe's global satellite navigation system. In January, the contract for the development of the second-generation Galileo satellites will be signed. Europe will also launch two first-generation Galileo satellites on a Soyuz from Kourou in 2021. These satellites are set to serve as backups or replacements for the oldest Galileo satellites. As humankind continues to face the challenge of climate change and our impact on the environment, Earth observation continues to be a cornerstone of ESA's activities. The agency will carry on operating 16 Earth observation satellites monitoring our planet. Through these programs, over 250 terabytes of data are distributed to users across the globe for scientific and operational purposes. In the coming year, ESA and the European Commission will also decide on the expansion of Europe's successful Copernicus Earth observation program. In 2021, two ESA astronauts will launch to the International Space Station. Thomas Pesquet will start his second long-duration mission in spring. His mission is called Alpha, after Alpha Centauri, the closest stellar system to Earth, following the French tradition to name space missions after stars or constellations. In autumn, German astronaut Matthias Maurer will fly to the space station for his first mission, called Cosmic Kiss, which represents the love of space. Matthias was the most recent astronaut to join the ESA Astronaut Corps and finished basic training in 2018. In 2021, ESA will start recruitment to find suitable candidates for a new astronaut class. Aboard the ISS, both Thomas and Matthias will spend a lot of time in the European Columbus laboratory, performing hundreds of experiments in zero gravity. ESA will continue to collaborate with NASA in human spaceflight with the ongoing development of NASA's Artemis 1 mission. The Artemis 1 mission will see the first flight of the new Orion capsule with ESA's European Service Module, ESM. The Orion spacecraft and ESM will become vital for human spaceflight, as they will fly astronauts to the future Lunar Orbiting Gateway, in which ESA is one of the contributing partners, but also to the Moon or even to Mars. While it might be a while before humans set foot on it, the exploration of the red planet presses forward with the continued development of ExoMars, ESA's Mars lander and rover, scheduled for launch in 2022, and the Mars Sample Return mission in collaboration with NASA that aims to retrieve samples from our neighbouring planet. A lot further into space, ESA spacecraft BepiColombo and Solar Orbiter will perform a near-simultaneous flyby of Venus in August. It will be the second flyby of the hottest planet in our solar system for both spacecraft. BepiColombo is on a 7-year journey to Mercury, and Solar Orbiter will be the first spacecraft to study the poles of our Sun. Science will also see the launch of the James Webb Space Telescope on top of an Ariane 5 from Kourou. This infrared telescope will study every phase in the history of our universe, ranging from the first luminous glows after the Big Bang to the formation of solar systems capable of supporting life on planets like Earth. Closer to home, ESA's Fly-Eye telescope will be tested and validated at Matera Space Center in Italy. This telescope has been specially designed to scan the heavens for near-Earth objects such as asteroids, which could potentially be a threat to our planet. June 2021 will mark the end of an era, when current ESA Director General Jan Wörner ends his tenure. Jan became ESA Director General in July 2015. At the time, he was the head of the German space agency DLR. With Jan as Director General, ESA saw a number of achievements, like securing a record budget at the Space 19 Plus Summit in Seville, Spain, and a renaissance in Europe's space industry, due in large to Jan's insistence that the private sector should play a larger part in Europe's space ambitions. Now it will be up to a new Director General, Josef Aschbacher, and a younger generation to take over and lead the European Space Agency into the future.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased to welcome everyone who is on the WebEx, as well as following us on the ESA Web TV. This is the traditional annual following us on the ESA Web TV. This is the traditional annual press conference of the Director General, and we are here in the HQ in Paris of the European Space Agency with Director General Jan Wörner and the Director General of Communication, and I will be your moderator for the session. The Q&A will be at the end, and for those who wish to submit questions, please go on a private chat and send the questions to me. Thank you. So without any ado, let me hand over to Jan Wörner.
Good morning, everybody. And somebody should switch off his mic.
Yes, I should have said everybody mute their computer and switch off their video. Thank you very much for it.
Good morning, everybody. I'm very happy that we can describe a little bit what we did. And also, good morning, everybody. I'm very happy that we can describe a little bit what we did and also what we will do. We are here together with all the ESA directors and also the new Director General, Josef Aschbacher, and the ESA experts are also available for all your questions you might have. I must say that I will look back to the year 2020, but I'm normally doing it like Albert Einstein, who said, I'm more interested in the future than in the past because the future is where I intend to live. But today my task is to look back and look what happened in the past. And you see, I had some four numbers, which is even five numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what does it mean? The 1 stands for One Europe, a united Europe. The 2 stands for two partners, the European Union and ESA. And as for that, I would like to show you a short clip. The European Union, the member states of ESA. So I hope that the message is very clear. That's the 2, that means European Union and ESA, and we will hear more about that. So the 3 are the 3 addressees of what we are doing. You could call it also the 3 destinations. Society at large, the economy, the industry, but also the environment. And when we are talking about environment, what we mean is the environment on Earth and the environment in space. So both are really addresses of what we are doing. So that's the number 3. The number 4 are the 4 programmatic pillars, which you all know: the science and exploration pillar, the safety and security pillar, with safety and security from space and in space, then the applications, Earth observation, navigation, telecommunications, then what we call enabling and support. This is covering the launchers, the technology, and the operations. And in the lower line of this picture, you see also the multi-directorate or multi-program activities, which are more and more important. The five are the 5 roles ESA can take. We are still an agency, as we were in the past, successful. So an R&D entity, we are partner of industry, we are a customer for industry, buying a service directly from industry. We try to be an enabler for industry as well as for our member states to enable them to do whatever they would like to do in space. And we are a broker where we combine our knowledge with intentions of different actors, be it in the public domain or in the private domain. So the year 2020 was a successful year, especially also the year after the Space 19 Plus. So the overall volume of our budget was about 6.7 billion euros, and you see here the sources from for the different parts. So 70% from our member states directly, 23% from the EU, of course coming also from the member states of the EU and therefore also from the same taxpayers, EUMETSAT and others meaning also including industry, etc. And looking to the different fields, so you can say about the same amount of money goes to science and exploration, applications and enabling and support. And the new pillar, safety and security, is growing rapidly, but of course starting with a very small number. So now looking back to some activities in the last year, I start with Bepi Colombo Venus flyby in October 15th, which was of course very important. I thought, okay, what the hell are they doing? So to go to Venus should be easy because to go to Mercury should be easy because it's just closer to the sun. So the direct path is very close. But if you go that way, then you will end up in the sun, and therefore with these swing-bys or flybys, we are reducing the velocity in order finally to come to an orbit around Mercury. We had the launch of Solar Orbiter, which was mentioned already also in the clip. And not only we had the launch, but we also had some first light. And if you look on this very nice picture, you see also already something very spectacular on the surface of the sun, and I'm sure that Günther Hasinger can explain it later on. These are the so-called campfires, tiny areas on the sun which are very, very active. And we got some awards for the Solar Orbiter mission. This is very nice. I mean, awards are always fine, but just to get already in the year of the launch, to get already some awards, that is something very special. From the science, which is part of the first pillar, I go to the second part in this first pillar, and this is the part of exploration. So you heard already that in the movie it was said that we have now, we could confirm that there will be 2 astronauts, ESA astronauts, partly together or timely together on the ISS in 2021. Also, we agreed already for European astronauts to the Gateway, and you see that the amount of money is really for exploration is increasing, so we can really say Europe is now in a new decade of exploration. In this last year, we had also Luca Parmitano's spacewalks, not only one, but several. He repaired and upgraded the AMS, the Alpha Magnetic Spectrometer, which is really fundamental research from space, very important for the scientists. This picture you saw already. This is the 2 astronauts which will fly this year. I will not go into detail of that because it's the future, but it was decided already last year. And another part which I would like to mention here, so I always get the question, what about the reason to go to the ISS, and always we explain all the research which is done, but in this very special case, the research was about also the COVID drug, because remdesivir was seen to be a good drug for that, and they did some experiment in space in order to have the delivery product better understood. We signed in last year the Gateway, NASA Gateway Corporation, together with Jim Bridenstine. It was done virtually, as many of the things happened virtually last year. The ESM3, you saw it also in the clip, the European Service Module number 3 arrived in Bremen from Torino, and this will be then part of a series for also ESM 4, 5 and 6. And all of this, of course, has also the moon in its focus. The moon, which was more or less forgotten for several years, because everybody thought the next step is Mars. Yes, Mars is important, but we should not forget the moon. So therefore, together with NASA, we are discussing also how to bring European boots on the moon, and not only the boots, but with some humans within the boots. Therefore we are looking also to more moon activities, and as it was said, the commercialization of space is going forward, and therefore the Moonlight Initiative to look for lunar economy is progressing. This is a cooperation of exploration, of navigation and telecommunication. The Mars sample return is the next step also in our solar system. ExoMars is the very next step in hopefully 2022, the launch of the second mission of ExoMars. But we are also looking to the Mars sample return round trip to Mars, and the activity was signed between NASA and us to go ahead with that. And I hope that this will be part of the future. Now I'm going to the safety and security pillar. The Hera contract was signed. Hera is the mission to go to an asteroid and to prepare for a counter-strike against an asteroid hitting toward the Earth. So it's a first step in this direction, but a very important step, because we should not do as the dinosaurs did, just waiting until an asteroid is hitting the Earth. In the same pillar, the Artemis mission was signed. Artemis is the debris removal mission to bring down an ESA-owned asset from space, and this was done in a very special fashion, and this is what we call the customer role of ESA, so buying a service from industry. Lagrange, the third mission in this space safety program, where we would like to go to L5 to observe solar flares and to have a weather forecast, which should be linked also to the weather forecast on Earth. This is very important, and we are really looking forward to do something which is good for people on Earth, to be warned in case of a strong solar flare. I go to the next pillar, which is the pillar of applications. I start with the with Earth observation. We had a mishap last year with one of our launchers, but we have to say that the Ceosat Ingenio mission had several objectives. Of course, it should do Earth observation, but also it should support and enable the Spanish industry. And we can say that this was really done in a positive way. So the launch failure was not good, but we could see that the teams were working excellently together, and the objective to support the Spanish industry was really fulfilled. But of course, we are looking forward to have a substitution of that in the future. The AELOS, you remember AELOS, this mission which can measure the wind speed, has now really shown that it can really work operational and impactful. And my hope is that in the future this will also part of the Copernicus understanding what can be done. I see your questions already, but we will answer the questions later on. interesting questions as I see them. So Copernicus is a success story. It's a European success story. There are many players, so mainly the European Commission and the European Space Agency, but as you see, for instance, for Sentinel-6, Mike Freilich, we had also a cooperation with NASA, with EUMETSAT and NOAA. And again, this satellite is working perfectly, so we can be very happy that this cooperation is working as that, and it's measuring the height of the sea level, which is one very important indicator to understand climate change. Here you see why this is very important. I know it cannot be immediately understood why it is important, but I will explain it. These are the lines of different satellites. So you see some acronyms. S3A means Sentinel-3A, JA3 means Jason-3, and then S6MF means Sentinel-6 Mike Freilich. So they are all orbiting the Earth, and by linking their results, we can also validate the data, we can calibrate the data, and that is very important if we want to have for a longer period the results of what is happening with the sea level. So therefore, this interaction of the different results is of utmost importance. I go to telecommunication. There is a lot to be done, and there was a lot to be done last year. I'm mentioning here only one thing, which we had in the Small Satellite Mission Service, where we had more than 50 satellites in one launcher, and the one was the ESA IL, which should give some more information to make our sea safer. So it's tracking for maritime applications. All of this is just one part. It's typical for telecommunication that we have the partnership projects in telecommunication, as we have them now also in other areas, for instance in Earth observation, but also in navigation and also in the launcher sector. Another aspect which I would like to mention here is that last year we started to have a very strong interaction and discussion with the European Union for a European connectivity initiative, and ESA is supporting that. We know we have a lot of things already developed, so for instance the quantum key distribution and how to use artificial intelligence and cloud competence for that. And therefore this is a part we did last year, and you will for sure hear something from Josef Aschbacher concerning the future of this infrastructure, development of this quantum communication infrastructure, which we prepared last year. The next part in this pillar of applications is the question or the aspect of navigation. The Galileo system is the best system in the world. I know that now some people will say, but you had some mishap. Yes, we had. And it's difficult to have an operational system 24/7 working perfectly, and therefore this is a very important thing. So to make it robust for the future is one of our things, but also to develop future Galileo satellites. So therefore we are now having 26 satellites in operation, and this is a big success of Europe. Again, a cooperation between the European Union and ESA. We are implementing, and the EC is paying for that very efficiently. So I go to the last pillar. The last pillar is, as I said earlier, it's enabling and support. So for instance, we have here the OPSAT, a flying lab for innovation, where we would like to test some things, some new technologies in space, which is important also for operations of the future. So this was successfully launched, and we had in this last pillar also the launcher system. So I mentioned already the SSMS with 53 satellites at once. We calculated that we could have even more of satellites in one launch, and this is also a future for the launcher sector, to be able not only to launch one or two satellites, but to be ready to launch at the same time a lot of smaller satellites, and therefore we did this successfully. We had then also some discussion with CNES in order to upgrade the CSG for future. Of course, CSG is the European Spaceport, and there is some ongoing discussion to make it ready for the future with it. Now, the future launch market is, of course, a very important point. So we had a discussion last year with several players how to go forward. We see that there is a fierce competition worldwide. I should not give names over here, but we know it. And there are very different requirements and requests for the launches. So there are different orbits from LEO to L5. Some of them were mentioned in my presentation. So the question is, what is really the institutional interest? Which is the institutional orbit to be covered? And what are the payloads which the institutional entities should cover, from CubeSats to our reusable spacecraft, Space Rider? And all of this should, from my point of view, and this was what we discussed last year, come into a new approach of future launch services, where the public domain is defining their institutional needs, and at that time already announced that there will be a service contract for these institutional needs. And in between, of course, competition, as we know, is a driver, so therefore competition is important. And as there is also some new development, the public-private partnership scheme seems to be appropriate for future development of new launch system. In this fourth pillar, the last point is tech. I could talk for hours for what was done in technology in ESA. I mention here only one, just to show you the direct link between different programs. It's the development of large deployable reflectors. And there was a development which will be used for the Copernicus Sentinels, the CIMR also. So this is a big deployable reflector developed in tech and will be used for Copernicus. Now all of this comes in a time where we see a digital transformation with new roles, new space, in a different way of interpretation, new structures, more performance orientation, new processes, and new opportunities. And in this digital transformation, ESA is very active. We defined what we call the digital twins. There are different names for that, but I use here the word of digital twins. So the first one is the digital twin spacecraft, in order to simulate spacecrafts in every direction. So we have it already for operations, but we would like to simulate the spacecrafts and have a twin, a virtual twin, for all the different possibilities. Then digital twin Earth and universe. Universe sounds great. It is great. We have the ESA Sky model, where you can really go through the universe and look to different things of the universe in different frequencies, meaning to understand different activities in our universe at large. And at the same time, there is now a discussion between Earth observation and the European Commission to develop together a digital twin Earth, where Earth observation, navigation, telecommunication can be combined. And the last one is digital twin ESA. That sounds very cryptic, but I believe that the digital transition will also have an influence on what we are doing in our organizations. So we can have new structures. I call them synaptic structures, where, because the digital transformation allows to connect each and everyone with each and everyone, and not only hierarchies. New space, this word is part of the digital transformation, and as I did several times, I would like also here to repeat what my understanding of new space is, after I discussed it with young entrepreneurs who normally are seen to be the new space, building a spacecraft in their living room or a rocket. New space, according to their definition, is cost reduction, commercialization, disruptive innovation, artificial intelligence, agility and flexibility. And if you take these different criteria, then each and everyone in space can be new space. That can be the small companies, it can be the big companies, but also the agencies. And I hope that ESA is a new space agency. Now, what we are doing in order to foster all these developments of new ideas is our business incubation centers. So far we have 20 ESA BICs in 60 cities in 17 European countries. And just in this moment, more than 300 startups under incubation. To fertilize the innovation, we also have the links to our universities. Here you see the inauguration of the BIC in Denmark, and you see how happy all of them are. This is important to have happiness, because happiness is a basis of motivation from my point of view. So I mentioned also we are trying to have the fertilization of innovation through cooperation with universities, and here you see our ESA labs with many different institutions, and they are not single activities, but they are linked to each other, and therefore it's a network, it's a web of innovation. And to foster innovation in our in-house, we have created the OSIP, the Open Space Innovation Platform, where we are collecting ideas. You see more than 1,400 ideas were collected for different areas, and then we try to stepwise to implement them and see what we can do out of them for our daily work. I would like to mention also that last year the ESA got a diversity award from the IAF. I congratulate the Chief Diversity Officer for that, Erzilia, who was really very active the last years, and these are really the results of what she was doing. So congratulations to ESA, because this is important. Diversity is not a must. Diversity is an asset for an organization. We don't do it because somebody is asking us to do it, but we are convinced that diversity brings us forward, whether it's in a question of gender, of generation, of culture, of background, or whatever. At this time, we are discussing since middle of last year the Financial Framework Partnership Agreement with the European Union. We are discussing it day by day, and this is very important because it should also strengthen the relation with the European Union, and we hope that we can conclude this in the very near future. Now, also in the near future, time-wise, is the next ESA Council at ministerial level. We started last year the preparation of that, discussing with the directors in ESA, but also with industry and our stakeholders to really have a program, but this will be the responsibility of my successor, to have a good proposal for the ministerial in next year, to convince the ministers of the different member states about our plans for the future. Our plans for the future goes also down in some question of money. So the Director General has, according to our convention, the task each and every year to propose for the next 10 years. We lost it?
Go ahead.
No. For the next 10 years to propose what is the financial idea, which is very difficult. I have no clue normally what is done the next 2 years, but the convention is asking to have a 10-year forecast, and therefore this is the forecast we presented to them, to the member states last year. That was my final long-term plan, as it is called. And you see here that we see some more or less constant development in our main pillars, with some difference in the different programs, but we believe that safety and security will increase, and that we also see that multi-directed activities will increase. And the lower part, this is the third-party money coming from the European Commission, EUMETSAT, and the grey part coming from industry. So what we have overall, we have what we call the mandatory program, where we hope to get some increase in the next ministerial, and then the optional programs, and then also the third-party program, which includes also the Financial Framework Partnership Agreement and its contribution of the EC to ESA as well as industry. Now the Corona crisis. I cannot go through this presentation of last year without saying a few words to the Corona crisis, which hit ESA as well as everybody. I would like to explain you what my understanding of this crisis is, and I make a parallel situation to the climate change, because both are global challenges and both follow more or less the same line. First, you have to discover it. The climate change was discovered on planet Venus with a very strong greenhouse effect, while the virus was discovered in Wuhan because some people were ill and you had to discover what is the reason for that. Then monitoring is important. We are monitoring the numbers of infections day by day. And in climate change, we are monitoring sea level rise, the ice melting, the temperature here and there. The next step is to raise awareness. We know that from climate change, to raise awareness is very important. People should be aware of what is happening, because only then they can understand that we have to do something against it. And ESA can raise awareness, and we do so. And in the coronavirus, the very important thing is to raise awareness in order that people are really helping to fight the virus. And the last thing is mitigation or adaptation, which is difficult for the virus. The vaccination is the method so far. And for climate change, also space can bring a lot of things to mitigate, not only to raise awareness, to mitigate. I will give you just one example for that, and these are the contrails of planes. Contrails are contributing to the question of climate change. And by combining Earth observation, navigation, and connectivity, telecommunication, we can minimize contrails and minimize the route lengths of planes, and by that really helping to fight climate change. Now, in the coronavirus crisis, we very early established a crisis team. This was more or less the next day, and discussed day by day of what to do. And we created for ESA, you cannot read this, it's not important. You should see that there are 5 different steps, step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We defined steps at the very beginning because we believed, and I still believe, that it's very important to have a consistent and coherent approach and not change the approach day by day. So we have 5 steps, and the steps are defined according to the different, or decided according to the infection rate. So when there is very low infection rate, we are at step 5. When there is a very high infection rate, we are at step 1. To give you the information, today we are at all sites of ESA except 2. We are at step 3, with about less than 10% of people on site. We are at 2 locations in a stricter situation. One is ESOC, because of the satellite operations. We are in step 2. And in EXAT in UK, we are at step 1 because of the very high infection rates and also the very strong national restrictions. So this is the way. Normally we try to have for all ESA sites the same steps, but right now we are a little bit different. We are all at step 3, except for Germany, for ESOC, we are at step 2, and for EXAT in UK, we are at step 1. So during the COVID crisis, it was clear that at a certain point we had to reopen our activities, especially for testing, because the satellites, the missions needed the information. So we opened that, but at the same time we also started webinars to give information to the public of how to really fight the virus, how to fight also the question of isolation. So astronauts, for instance, were reporting what to do. The virus had also a positive impact on ESA. That is a little bit complicated picture, but I will tell you what it is. When we get from industry a bill, we have to pay it. And of course, industry is interested that we pay it quickly, but there are a lot of different steps of procedures within ESA, and normally it takes between 3 to 4 weeks, 26 working days. Using the digital transformation during the COVID crisis, which was accelerated by the COVID crisis, we could go down. Now we are at something like 8 days. So this is a rapid acceleration. All of this comes for me together for what I said at the very beginning. 1, Europe from space is borderless, and therefore I'm still fighting for united space in Europe. This is my view back and my view into the future. Now we go to 2021, and you know that I will leave. It's not the question to go from a dishwasher to a millionaire, or from a little rascal, or from a rags to riches, but it is from a little rascal to ESA DG. I'm very thankful to all who supported me, and I will forgive all those who were fighting against me. My part is over at ESA in a couple of weeks. I'm really grateful that I had this opportunity, and with that I hand over to my successor, Josef Aschbacher, and I wish him all the best. Also, I'm still here, but I wish him all the best for the future and for ESA as well. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And now to Josef Aschbacher, who is probably sharing his presentation.
Okay, so thank you, Philippe, thank you, Jan, for this smooth handover. Let me just say maybe a few words before I go in recalling some of the highlights of which are coming up this year, but you have already got a very good taste from Jan himself, but also the introductory movie was very nice. Over Christmas, Jan and myself, we had quite good, intense, but very constructive discussions, and I would like to use this occasion really to thank Jan personally, but also in front of this audience, for the good transition which he organizes and which we have together. And it is important for ESA, it is important for all of us that the handover from one DG to the next one is working well. And I really would like to highlight this. And Jan, thank you from my side for doing all you can here. You will also recognize that some of the slides which I'm going to show in a minute are actually made by Jan, I should say, and certainly very much a continuation of what you have just seen right now, which again, I think underlines that we are talking every day in order to make sure that this is going very smooth. As you also know, as Jan was saying, all the directors are online, so I will present some of the highlights, but certainly the directors will also be there as a team to respond to some of the questions which are coming up. I will show just a handful of slides, not too many, to recall some of the highlights for this year. The last two slides are more looking into the future and a bit more visionary of where I would like to go as an agency, as a new DG of ESA, but you will see in a minute of what the direction will be, which I'm proposing. Let's start here, shaping the future of European space. This is very much in line with what you have just heard. It is also important to recall, and we are this week, in fact, at the week of the European Space Week, where a lot of statements have been made by key people in Europe, and I really would like to recall that at the beginning of this week, we had very visionary statements. I'm sure everyone has been listening very carefully to the statements made, in particular the opening remarks, certainly of Charles Michel, but in terms of space responsibility by Thierry Breton. He gave a very strong, very powerful vision of where he wants to go at the side of the European Commission, and you will hear from my side that my approach will be going hand in hand with the European institutions to make sure that space is going up one level and that we are really engaging together in reinforcing and strengthening space. You see here on the right-hand side the next ministerial conference. As you know, at the ministerial level on the ESA side, at the ministers level, the chairmanship of ESA is shared between France and Portugal, and I'm really looking forward to work with both of them to prepare the ministerial conference, but also possibly an interministerial conference which is on the way to the ministerial at the end of 2022. You have seen this picture here. I don't need to dwell much further on it. It is showing our two astronauts, Thomas and Matthias, getting ready for launch this year in the second quarter and the last quarter of this year on the Alpha and Cosmic KISS mission. This certainly will be a huge highlight. This is something I would actually be very keen to see and wish them good luck when going onto their mission, because this is obviously something that inspires people, and we need very much in Europe also this inspirational aspect. On the right-hand side, astronaut selection, Jan has mentioned it. We have put things in motion to make the selection this year. On the 16th of February, there will be an announcement to the press how the announcement or how the selection process will be conducted. Dave Parker with us will be at this press conference and really explain the details of what is happening and how this is working. Then you see this slide here, the International Space Station, which is constantly being refurbished and being built up. You see the European robotic arm, which will be delivered in mid this year. It is produced in particular by Airbus Netherlands, and is quite an important milestone that we can really bring this robotic arm to the space station. Certainly something that we have been looking forward for quite some time. It is to be mounted on the Nauka Russian science module, and quite an important aspect. This slide here shows really that ESA can be moving extremely fast. Sometimes people do believe that ESA is a big administration and things take their time, which certainly is also true, but believe me, I'm very committed to speed up process where we can. But in this case, it was done by Jan and by Dave and everyone involved in this activity. So what you see here is the signature event of Dave Parker with Thomas Zurbuchen in 2019, where it was decided that we are putting hardware on the moon surface. You see here the Prospect Ion Trapper mass spectrometer, or PITMS as it is abbreviated, which will be put on the surface, and these developed instrument on the surface to measure this tenuous or mystical lunar atmosphere, and it will be brought to the moon on the Astro Robotic Peregrine Lander to Lacus Mortis. And you see that this is planned for this year, mid this year, 2021. So really this is showing how we can act very quickly when things have to be done together also with other partners. So now coming to Earth observation, of course, this is a dossier which I know extremely well. And just to highlight that on the Earth Explorer implementation, we are making very important steps forward this year. The Earth Explorer 9 forum will start the industrial or contractual work for Phase B2 CD. This was selected and funded at the last ministerial. Earth Explorer 10, we will down select from these 3 missions to candidates or candidate for Phase 8. This will be done in spring this year, a very important milestone. And then on the right hand side you see Earth Explorer 11, which again where we got a lot of proposals, 16 last year, and we will down select to select candidates for Phase 0. So you really see here that the Earth Explorer process from Earth Explorer 9, Earth Explorer 10, Earth Explorer 11 is very well organized, and we have a very clear path towards the future to have science missions coming up in a routine basis. This is really a big achievement of our member states who have been providing the equivalent funding. Copernicus, it was mentioned already, certainly one of the highlights I would like to underline where we have been focusing on Earth observation last year, and we will focus this year. There's a very important decision point coming up. It will be done together with our member states of ESA, but also with the European Commission, hand in hand, to go forward on the larger architecture of what Copernicus looks like and what the next elements are. There's a lot to say. I don't want to go too deep on this decision point here, but certainly we are defining the next longer-term future of Copernicus this year through this decision point process. Let me go on to James Webb, already mentioned by Jan. This is a very, very important collaboration which was built up with NASA and the Canadian Space Agency. Obviously, NASA is leading this mission, but it is really quite impressive and certainly the most complex scientific mission that has been built until today and probably for a long time to come. It is the next generation after Hubble. It is an infrared observatory and it is really geared to look backwards in time into our universe. And what is quite impressive is that the James Webb Telescope will allow us to go closer to the Big Bang in terms of understanding the origins of the universe, closer to almost 200 million years after the Big Bang. It may sound a lot, but in universal time scales, this is very far back to really understand how planets are formed, how stars are formed, exoplanets and their atmospheres, and this will be quite a unique occasion. As Jan was mentioning already, the launch is planned on an Ariane 5 rocket towards the end of this year. October is our current launch date. Then we go to secure connectivity. Again, I'm saying something that was mentioned by Jan, but just to highlight a few points that are coming up this year. Certainly, you have heard Thierry Breton speaking very clearly about the secure connectivity project he is initiating at European level. It is certainly an initiative of the European Commission, but ESA is committed to support this initiative with our means and with our expertise and with our technology. ESA has been working on this domain for many, many years. In fact, on Euro QCI, quantum communication, we have worked and we have initiated contracts last year. They will be ready in spring this year and bring very important results also to the initiative of the European Commission in order to make sure that this ambition also of the European Commission can be supported with our expertise. But overall, I really would like to say, and this is something I would certainly focus also as DG of ESA, I would like to work very closely with the European Commission in establishing a new flagship for Europe, in this case on connectivity. We have a lot to offer in terms of expertise, but also contributions. We will work with our member states to see how the Artemis program can be used to the maximum benefit in supporting this initiative. But in the Telecom and Integrated Applications Directorate, there are also many other programs and activities ongoing. Some of them are very complementary or in support of what I just mentioned. Space for 5G is one example, but also we are deploying an ESA 5G, 6G hub in EXAT, which is quite exciting. Also on Space Systems for Safety and Security, or 4S as you probably know it, we are making big progress. Optical communication, hydron, quantum launch is what was already mentioned, consolidating the Moonlight initiative and many more, which is going on in the TIA Directorate. Not to forget also our BICs, the business incubators. We are having quite a number across the member states, and our goal is to have at least one in all the ESA member states. In some of them we have more than one, as you know. Then we go to launches. There is a lot to say, but I'm just putting a few graphs and elements together, which Jan has been showing in his slide. This is a very intense year or period for launches. First of all, our focus has to be to have the maiden flight of Vega C and Ariane 6 organized and happening on time as planned. As you know, Vega C this year, Ariane 6 next year, and this will certainly require quite some emphasis to make sure that this is happening as planned. Also, of course, to prepare and to ensure the exploitation of both launches in a sustainable manner. But then, as Jan was already indicating, and I will work very closely with Daniel and his colleagues in looking at the time after the current launches that are being made ready for maiden flights, what the next launcher, European launcher, will be. It is very clear, launch is strategic. We need to be on the forefront on the launcher business as well. The pressure is high, is extremely high, and Europe may need to change gear in order to really remain competitive on the segment where Europe has actually been leading the commercial exploitation of launchers for many decades, and we need to regain our share and our competitivity very clearly and very strongly. And this is an exercise I would like to undertake very seriously. I do not have the magic solution, what we do and how we do it. This needs a bit of reflection, but certainly I'm very committed to do that as when I become DG of ESA. Then let me go to some of the technology small satellite developments which are taking place, mostly in the Directorate of Tech of Franco Ongaro. You see here some of the CubeSats, or smaller satellites that are being developed and are made ready for launch this year. On VV19, the RadCube and Sunstorm satellites, they are geared to measure space weather, something that of course is extremely important with the increased number of spacecraft in orbit. On the bottom right you see something very interesting, Micro HeadSat, which is a project of ESA together with CTAL and ASI on ion thrusters, on microsatellites, again, a technology which we are developing and we are pushing forward in-house very successfully and very interesting to do innovation also with small sats, of course, with the goal to transform this to larger satellites. Another highlight which we had last year was actually FISAT, where we had an AI chip on board a small sat. Quite groundbreaking, and it was a first in the world. Again, there we are already taking steps to have a feasibility study how this AI processing and machine learning algorithms can be applied on larger satellites, for example on CHIME, and see how this disruptive innovation can be transformed and take place on more traditional satellites like the Sentinel expansion missions. Adrios, again, pushing our frontiers, as Jan was mentioning before. I'm not going into these steps here, just to say that this is extremely important that we engage ourselves here. I will certainly commit myself to expand in general space safety as a topic, and this is something that is one example of how we do it in a new way, and this is having obviously my full support, and I will further expand on this. The budget of ESA for this year, 6.49 billion. It was published already in the past, so you know these figures. It is slightly smaller than what was the budget for 2020, but this does not mean, and I underline, does not mean that the ESA activities are going down. We have always natural fluctuations of budgets, a bit higher, a bit lower from year to year. It's almost the same, by the way, than the one of last year, but some of the new contributions, including the ones from the European Commission, will only kick in next year and from next year onwards. So I would expect next year, again, a slight increase. This is the breakdown by domain. I'm not going into those in detail. You can see it and you have got the handouts, how they are broken down. But this gives you a good distribution of the various weight or activities that are going on in the various directorates and programs. And this is the income side of the budget. Again, you know these figures, you have these figures, are quite important to underline that a good portion comes from third parties, in particular the European Commission. You see about 25%. ESA is very grateful for this, obviously, but also this is a basis for very strong and good cooperation which we are building up and which we have built up over the past. Now there are two more slides that show, that give a glimpse into the future of what I intend to, or how I intend to go into doing my new job. I should say that I've learned about the new start date or the possible new start date very recently, so do not expect a full-fledged strategy already at this stage. But what I can say is that I'm working on something called Agenda 2025. I do plan to publish this document soon after I take office, within a month or so. I will certainly do this as an inclusive process with my team first and foremost, very clear, but also with the member states, with the European Commission and other key stakeholders in Europe to really come with a vision or with a program, at least from my point of view, from an ESA point of view, of where we want to go in space in the next couple of years. And by doing so, I think it is very important to take note what happens in Europe. All of you have seen Thierry Breton's speech on Monday, also on Tuesday. I found it very encouraging, the statements he made for ESA. It is quoted here. And I think this is something I really would like to pick up, because ESA is an essential partner for space in Europe. And I really would like to make ESA the main agency, the go-to agency of the European Commission for all its flagship programs. And I'm really committed to doing this, not only for the next 4 years, but prepare ESA to be well on track to do it for the long term. And I would like to work on a vision that goes beyond obviously the mandate of me as a DG, which is finishing in 2025, but really to the next decades, 1 to 2 decades, 35 to 40 in terms of years, to build up this joint vision. I have some ideas. I don't want to go too deep right here, but this needs reflection, discussion with many. But before I look into the longer term future, there are some immediate steps to be tackled, obviously, and you know them, or some of them are obvious. And I'm just putting a few bullets here, a few highlights of what this will be. Certainly, to start with, there are program-specific challenges which we have on the table. I mentioned launches, certainly being an immediate one I would like to take on also at the DG level. SATCOM is another one. We have heard about connectivity. There's also discussions needed how we go ahead on some of the exploration activities, Earth observation, certainly the domain I know well. We need to make sure that we are staying ahead and staying on top of the international activities and remain competitive, or even to say remain the leader in the world. There is a lot happening on the commercial side, on the institutional side, and certainly this is something I will focus, and many other domains in the program directorates. And I will obviously do this very, very closely with my directors, who are knowing things extremely well, and always with our member states. ESA-EU relations, certainly a focus of my DG-ship. I'm happy to do that. I think it is necessary and absolutely important that this becomes an issue that we really do go, as I said, hand in hand with the Commission in raising the awareness and the ambition of Space for Europe. You will hear a bit more in the near future of what and how we plan to do this. Commercialization, again, raised by Jan, and he has put a very strong commercialization agenda already in motion during his DG-ship. I will certainly do that, intensify it on some elements, make sure that we work well with funding entities, venture capital companies and others, but also streamlining our processes, being more dynamic, being faster and more responsive to a very fast turning world around us, making sure that this is that we are not left behind, the opposite, that we are making full use and that we establish a good landscape and ecosystem for European businesses from the commercial point of view. Space and security, again, we have a safety and security pillar. I will certainly continue what Jan has been building up. We need to work deeper and further on these aspects to explore and see how space can be used for security. There's much to do. It's a bit delicate, and I will work obviously very closely with member states on seeing what can be done, but certainly something that needs to be addressed and needs to be investigated. And last but not least, ESA efficiency. We are, I would say, a very successful, very efficient agency already, but always we need to move forward. We need to stay on top of it, and efficiency is something I really would like to also look into. This is more a process within ESA, in-house, but also with our member states, to make sure that we are a modern agency. And when I leave office at the end of my term, that ESA is lean, ESA is a modern agency, and is a slightly different agency from what it is today in terms of how we work internally and externally. So thank you very much.
So thank you very much, the two speakers, and of course for the journalists who sent their questions. We are going to take them a few ones and try to summarize. Be aware that we will make sure that the slides will be available to everyone. So there's a lot of information in there, and forgive us if it's so dense. So let's go. For a couple of questions which we have raised, and starting with Pascal Hansen on the status of Pascal Hansen on the. I will give the questions instead of handing it over to you. So this is a question related to the status of the FFPA, the Financial Framework Partnership Agreement for the.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. The FFPA is, as it was pointed out several times by several speakers today and in the past, is a very important instrument because it links ESA and the EU for the future. It is a partnership agreement, as the word is saying, partnership agreement, but it's also about financial aspects. And in this financial partnership agreement, we want to really define all the different actions ESA can take for the and on behalf of the EU, for the European citizens at large. And the status today is that we have, for several points, we have an agreement. There are some points where it is still to be discussed, and we defined some compromise formulations for several aspects, because I saw also in one of your questions you are asking specifically to the so-called contracting authority. We are developing on our side, on ESA side, a compromise which talks about the governance, not just using the word of contracting authority, but looking for the contents of it. And my hope is that in the next weeks, where we have several meetings with the European Commission and with JUSPA, so with the EU in that part, that we find a solution which is acceptable for the EU member states, for the ESA member states. So there are many players at the same time, but I'm optimistic that we will find a solution as long as the people are looking for the goal and not for vanities.
For Joseph.
Okay, Copernicus shortfall. Yes, this is something that occupies me at the moment as Director of Earth Observation, and for sure also as DG. It's a big thing, because Europe today has a clear leadership established, and if I say Europe, obviously ESA has done its good share in building up and developing Copernicus, but it is really the European Commission, European Union, EUMETSAT, ESA, and many actors who are working very closely together. And quite often we hear that Copernicus is the gold standard in Earth observation, and in fact it is. This is said by others outside Europe, but I'm happy to hear that, and it is true. Now we are in a delicate phase, because we're building up the next generation, and we are having a funding shortfall, about 2 billion, 2.3 billion. And it worries me a lot still, or it will worry me a lot this year, that we make sure that we find a good solution. On one side, to have an architecture in place that allows to respond well to the needs and priorities of Europe as a whole, and the priorities are expressed by the European Commission, as you know. To have an architecture in place that responds to it, to our sentinels and the data we deliver. On the other side, making sure that we improve and build up the next step, the next generation, with new technologies and new satellites, the famous expansion missions which are on the table. And I really will do everything I can to have all 6 Sentinel expansion missions flying and being them built up, because they are all important. You cannot single out one or the other as being less important or less critical. They all look at our planet. They all help understanding issues of climate change, Arctic, Africa, all the priorities of the European Commission and European Union, and we have to work closely together. But this I will do very closely with the European Commission and with the member states to find solutions. I don't have the solution today, it would be nice, but we have committed ourselves to find solutions by the end of this year.
Joseph, you mentioned several times Thierry Breton, the Commissioner for Internal Market. He announced this week on Monday the creation of a European Launcher Alliance. This is a question from Thierry Dubois from Aviation Week. He wants to know, is it correct to say that the decision center of gravity is changing?
Okay, I wouldn't say that the center of gravity is. Launcher has many domains, and one aspect is certainly a political one, and another one is a technical one. And I think the recognition that launchers have also a strong political dimension has been really at the origin of Thierry Breton's statements. As I said before, I do not want to offer the magic solution, because I do not have it today. There's a lot of work to be done, but I think it is very clear that we have to work together to find solutions for Europe also in the launcher domain in particular, because that is one where we are a lot under pressure from a commercial perspective. So yes, I would like to sit down with Thierry Breton at the next possible location, obviously after I take office, to sit down and really discuss what we can do. I'm sure there are many options or different availabilities, what can be done, but I'm certainly wanting to offer to be the trusted partner, to be the one who knows a lot about launches, who has done a lot on launches. We certainly are driving the launcher sector to a large extent with, of course, the Ariane Space and Ariane Group and many partners in Europe. But I would also like to engage with Thierry Breton on what can best be done.
Another comment is referring to the comparison with the US and the Buy American as opposed to a Buy European on a very competitive market for launchers. So what needs to change to make European launchers competitive commercially in this area? This is a question from Dan Tisd on geoeconomy.
Yeah, I will start with the answer, but I would like to hand over then to Daniel. We should not look, from my perspective, to a Buy European Act, because that would mean that the globe, the world, is looking for bi-national or bi-continental, and we would be the losers, because we would like also to export our possibilities, our launchers. So therefore, I think this is not a good idea. I totally support that from an institutional point of view, the European institutions should use the European launcher, but we should not say, now please, European Parliament or ESA or whoever, have an act of Buy European only in general terms. But I would like Daniel to go in that, because he is much better informed. Daniel, can you jump in, please?
Good morning to everybody. So first of all, of course, we need to fly European in order to have a bulk perspective for European industry in this sector. This is for sure, but this can just done through contracts, and we have here a good instrument to enhance this perspective, giving a longer-term perspective to European industry. Then, regarding the commercial aspect, I think we have to keep in mind three key axes in order to improve the position in which we are right in. I should also recall that we come out of a very strong position with Ariane 5 and Vega started well. Now we have Ariane 6 and Vega C, which are facing a fierce competition, as it has been mentioned. There are axes on which we are working. One is certainly new technologies. One is the economy of scales we have to keep in mind in order to see how we have to optimize also the industrial tool with regard to the market perspective. And last but not least, let's also insist that we do not only speak about access to space, but also space transportation at large, which means that we have a potential extension in the value chain. And these three axes will be ingredients for this new perspective, which we have to work out in 21 beyond Ariane 6 and Vega C.
Okay, thank you. A lot of questions related to the astronauts, and of course, we're referring to a specific press conference that we are going to have on the 16th of February, just on the topic of the astronaut selection. But there was a question related to the astronauts for the Artemis program. First astronaut to the moon, what is the position of ESA at this stage for the three astronauts?
Of course, we would like to see an astronaut on the surface, a European astronaut on the surface of the moon. When you're asking when will it will be a Monday. That's clear. Because on the weekend, we celebrate the weekend. No, I don't know. We don't know, but I'm sure Dave Parker had a better answer for that. Dave?
Thank you very much. I think the question I saw was about the astronauts onto the gateway. So as Director General said, part of the agreement with NASA is that there will be 3 European astronauts that will fly on Orion to the gateway and work there. There are no specific decisions about which Artemis launches we will have our European astronauts. Indeed, all of the planning for astronaut assignment for Artemis has not occurred yet. It will be done through a multilateral process in the same way as we have for the space station. But it's fair to say that, of course, we're interested in our astronauts participating in the commissioning and use of our contributions to the gateway. So that's IHAB and ESPRIT. Thanks.
Dave, while you're there, could you quickly answer the questions related to the next European astronaut to the ISS? There were a couple of one there, in particular from the RAI News 24 on Samantha Cristoforetti.
Yeah, so the first thing is that, as the Director General has previously stated, in line with our commitments at Space 19 Plus, all of the astronauts of the current class will make a second mission to the International Space Station up to the period 2024-2025. So currently, Thomas Pesquet is assigned for his mission Alpha. The launch date, there's a question about that, no earlier than the 30th of March, but reasonably in April timeframe. Space station is very busy, so all of the different missions, both Soyuz and commercial crew and the cargo vehicles are being shuffled. So I expect April time is most likely. And then Matthias Maurer's flight will be about 6 months after Thomas' flight. And no other specific assignments have been made so far. There's a question about Samantha Cristoforetti. She will make a mission sometime after Thomas and Matthias's flight. And those are being coordinated with the international partners in due course.
Okay, Dave, also there has been a change in the US with a change of administration with Biden. There was a question about whether that would have an impact on the Artemis program. Could you have a brief comment on that?
We are in constant discussion with our NASA partners. I talk to Kathy Luders on a monthly basis. It's fair to say that our contributions to Artemis 3, the European Service Module number 3, doesn't change where it is going. The long-term planning from our side has been based on European astronauts going to the surface of the moon towards the end of this decade. And so my feeling is the program will continue very positively, and we'll all focus now on the Artemis 1 launch. Thanks.
Yeah, and there was an interesting curiosity reason for leaving earlier, ending your mandate. It was preliminary foreseen in end of June. So there's a question here, why?
It's very simple. It's very simple. You see, on the 17th of December of last year, the ESA Council elected Josef Aschbacher as my successor. Josef is a strong internal director. He is so far he was responsible for Earth observation. I personally proposed him some years ago to become an ESA director, to become an Earth observation director. And now he was elected as the future Director General. And the proposal, the paper of the ESA Council said not later than 1st of July. And I thought, and I still believe, that I was right, that to have a 6 months transition looks like a nice thing, but if United States of America can do it within 2 months, ESA should do it also within a shorter period. And I believe it's better for Josef not to be on the waiting seat for 6 months. It's better for ESA to have not 2 DGs, 1 DG in the seat and 1 DG waiting impatiently to get the seat, and then Jan Wörner, who is then in a lame duck position. So that very simple reasons, and therefore, together with the chair of the council, I propose to the council that they should decide about an earlier take up of duty of Josef, and this is the 1st of March, and we are waiting for the final decision.
To answer quickly Julia's questions, what's your plan?
Okay, on the 1st of March, if this comes true, what we believe, then I can tell you.
Okay. The other important event was, of course, Brexit, and there's a question here related to SSTL and the UK industry. What is the future of the UK industry, and in particular the role of the space effort in the UK, especially in the Copernicus program, but also others?
Concerning Galileo, I think we should head over to Paul Verhoef, and concerning Earth observation, I'm sure that Josef can answer that. Paul?
Yes, good morning, everybody. On Galileo, we have, of course, seen coming that Brexit would happen. We have, at the request of the Commission, we have therefore worked to transfer a number of activities, let me say, to the continent. This concerns, in particular, classified activities. All other activities have continued in the UK without any problems to the end of the contracts. At the moment, SSTL has delivered all the payloads for the so-called batch 3 of the first generation satellites. The last ones have been going to ESTEC for testing before they go to Bremen, to OHB, to be completed. And yes, indeed, it is of course unfortunate that the UK is now excluded from the navigation programs of the EU, meaning Galileo and EGNOS, and that the UK has politically decided not to join these programs. So we don't expect to see UK participation on those programs. There may be small exceptions for certain components which come out of the UK, which we cannot get anywhere else. But this is what it is. This is the political reality of the day.
On Copernicus, the situation is slightly different for two reasons. First of all, Copernicus, as you know, is a co-funded program by the European Commission and by ESA. So the UK is fully participating in the ESA part of Copernicus, or the ESA program called Copernicus Space Component Segment 4. And there they participate, like in other ESA programs, very well. But of course, the Copernicus being co-funded, also the activities are very much, I would say, interleaved and connected. And therefore, it was really good news on Christmas Eve when in the Brexit, or as part of the Brexit agreement, Copernicus was included in the deal as one program where the UK can participate even after Brexit. And this is currently ongoing. The UK is now negotiating with the European Commission and the European Union under which conditions and how this participation looks in detail. But this is certainly excellent also from an ESA perspective, and because we have a very strong partner in the UK. Their expertise is essential, and I'm really happy that the UK is joining, or is hopefully joining the Brussels part, that means the EU Copernicus program. This is also helping us in the funding gap, which I mentioned before, because their contribution, and in addition to the expected one of Norway and hopefully also Switzerland, will certainly help alleviating some part of this gap, which I mentioned earlier. But it's not only about the gap. Of course, it is all about meaningful work and meaningful activities, which we are doing and which we want to continue and maybe reinforce to do with the UK, which is at the core of it. And this is part of future discussions. But very good news.
Two unrelated questions, Joseph. One is, do you have already a successor identified?
Do I have a successor identified? So as Jan was saying, that the 1st of March deadline has yet to be confirmed formally by member states. But if we are staying at this working assumption for a moment, I will put in place an acting director when I become DG. The acting director will be an internal candidate. I can give the name because it is also important for the community to know who this is. It is Tony Tolker Nielsen. He is at the moment the head of the projects department in my directorate. He used to be the Inspector General of ESA. He is very well known to many people, and he will step in as acting director when I become DG. But then, of course, in parallel, we start the formal process of selecting a new director of Earth observation programs. This undergoes the standard procedures of ESA. An opening will be made for the post, and we will go through the various selection steps. But this will take a couple of months, and until a new director comes in place, Tony will fill in as acting director.
So the other question was about the EU Recovery Fund. Is there any way ESA will directly benefit from that fund?
So far, my understanding is, but maybe Jean-Max can correct me, that the recovery fund is really linked to the nations, to the different EU member states. But I'm not sure whether, Jean-Max, whether you have better information about that. So that means, of course, we can, together with our member states, organize something that this recovery fund in the specific nation is used also for space activities, for the space industry, and by that ESA could also be, let's say it, indirectly benefiting from it. But Jean-Max, do you have a better answer to that?
No, good morning to all of you. No, I don't have any further information on this. It's mainly related to member states. So it will go through nation, through member states. So in such a case, we can help them in order to structure some programs for space industry. But there is up to now no direct link with ESA.
Okay, thank you.
But maybe just to add, so we had contact with several member states and told them if they want to have our support in this question, then we are ready. For instance, if they say, okay, we have the recovery fund, but we would like to discuss with ESA where to use it and how to use it. So we have this proactively. We contacted some member states.
This is the first time we have also a annual press conference of new director for telecommunications. So Elodie VO is here, and there's a question addressed. There was a lot of discussion about priority on the EU space conference about the secure communication broadband system. Is there any way we can give a brief comment on that, as the question was raised by one of the journalists, Jonathan Amos, his internal market commissioner, seems to suggest this week that the ESA would be an investor in the new secure communication constellation. So any comment from you or Elodie?
Elodie, you should jump in.
Elodie?
Unmute
Elodie,
yourself, that would be very important. We can. Now
yes.
We can hear you.
Do you hear me well? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. So yes. So ESA and I we are ESA and I we are extremely pleased to have indeed a connectivity initiative from the Commissioner Breton that is taking off, as both Jan and Joseph mentioned. So we will work with ESA member state and support EU to achieve this ambition to deploy a secure and autonomous European space infrastructure timely, because the timely is key in this endeavor. So we will consult our member state how we can best leverage on our ongoing activity to support, because we have already some funding for those member states that has been put in place for the space system safety and security within the telecommunication.
Okay, your liaison is not very good.
Also that we will advance on quantum, so that we have already activities. We have already activities that are ongoing for quantum. So we are available to work in partnership with the European Commission in support to this initiative, especially for the innovation and our partnership project with the industry. So 2021, as mentioned, is going to be key and decisive. So we are already working on it and supporting the management station again with our member state. We are going to be available to future support the solution with the implementation phase. So we are working on it as we speak.
Thank you. I see that we are now getting really later than foreseen. Thank you, Elodie. We also intend to answer all the questions which have been raised on the chat. So at this point in time, I can take maybe one more question. Is there anyone who would like to intervene in his own way? You can send me a message on my private. But at this point, I think we should ask a closing word, in particular, Joseph, on on the priority for climate change activities, there was at least 2 or 3 questions related to the air pollution. The COVID lower the activities of air pollutions. That was facts, that was measured. But what's the future? What are the actions that the European Space Agency is going to take on contributing to a measurement and action around that?
Yeah. Okay. On one side, the dashboard which we have built up to monitor the impact of COVID on daily life, including air pollution, but also traffic, agriculture, and many other parameters, will be continued. I've agreed this with Thomas Zurbuchen and Dejada from JAXA at the end of last year, and at least until June this year, and possibly beyond, as we see that the crisis is not disappearing so quick. On the issue of pollution measurements, yes, we have a lot of interesting missions in the pipeline. Sentinel 5P certainly is today the most accurate greenhouse gas measurement device from space and is bringing incredibly good data to everyone. We have Sentinel 4 and Sentinel 5 in the pipeline to be launched on board MDG and METOP SG, which are coming up very soon. But also we are, as part of the next generation Sentinels, building the most precise CO2 measurement device. CO2 is a very difficult gas to measure. It requires very, very high precision. And being able, and this satellite will be able to do so, to distinguish anthropogenic from natural sources and sinks of CO2 is quite an achievement, or will be quite an achievement when the satellite flies. And this is part of the next so-called expansion satellites. But I would like to underline, and sometimes people are, would say, almost falling in the trap, that the CO2 satellite of the next generation Sentinels is not the only one measuring CO2, because CO2 is a cycle. There's CO2 in the atmosphere, obviously on the surface with all the vegetation, either as a source or as a sink, as a source if it is burned or if it is released, as a sink, obviously the vegetation that absorbs CO2, and also the ocean. So this cycle of CO2 between the atmosphere, the ocean, and the land is important, and that needs measurements of the atmosphere, of the ocean parameters, and of the land parameters. And therefore, CO2 is a conglomerate of different satellites and sensors that need to be in orbit in order to understand the full cycle. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll take a last question here. Again, thank you, Thierry Dubois, to suggest that we write the answers, and I will ask Elodie to write it to you later on, and this will be available also on our website. But the last question, which is of course extremely important here, coming from Dieter Zurich, ESA is discussing to restructure the Ariane system so that the European launcher is more competitive with SpaceX, let's name it, because the question is there. So you have concepts on how this is possible despite the geo-return. And this is related to another question on that geo-return.
I will start with the famous geo-return question. The geo-return is not something against competition. It is one of the fake news, I have to say. Geo-return allows to have competition. Why that? Because through geo-return, we make the industry in our member states stronger. And suddenly, a member state which has no activity in this or that field is able to have an activity. So therefore, I see geo-return not as a break for competition, but as a supporter. But as I always say, we have to have competition and cooperation at the same time. And therefore, the competition is, for me, the clear answer to go forward. And therefore, when I said it in my presentation about the future launcher approach, this must have more competition also in Europe. We have the very special question, and Daniel could say it much better than me, that we have a low cadence. So it's an egg and hen paradigm. Because if you have a cheaper launcher, you get more launch opportunities, and by more launch opportunities, you can make the launcher cheaper. So this is a hen and egg issue, but therefore we have to make the right steps now, and that means we have to reduce the costs per launch, and by that also being stronger in the competition, worldwide competition, and by that getting more launch opportunities. More launch opportunities make the cost of an individual launcher cheaper. And to go there, in my opinion, is that a strong competition within Europe is important. Based on industry we have in many member states, we can really accelerate this point. But again, if you allow me, I would ask Daniel whether he would like to add something or whether I was coherent and complete enough. Daniel?
I think you gave a very complete answer, Jan. Let me just add one additional comment, is that on existing products and ones under development, we work on 3 axes to increase competitiveness right now. One is, of course, cost reduction, and there are a number of ways of doing it. Competition is a key enabler. Second is to increase, of course, the performance of the current systems. And third is also to increase the versatility. And I think these are all parameters of competitiveness to be fully taken into account. But it is clear the key motto is that for future, we are enhancing the competition. And let me add that we are right now having system studies ongoing on new European space transportation solutions, and we will have the outcome before mid of the year.
Thank you very much. I see some other questions related to debris, but I suggest that this being answered in writing. There will be a lot of things coming up for continuing this interaction with you. And in particular, the month of February, we'll have a chance to have an important event in Bremen regarding the European Service Module. As you can imagine, this is of prime importance for ESA. Another event a day later on OPSAT will also invite media to stay tuned on that project. And as we say several times today, all the astronauts' questions and new recruitment will be announced and expanded by our Director of Exploration on the 16th of February. So thank you for having taking the chance to extend this by half an hour. It was extremely rich in terms of information. We'll give you that. All this information is available to you, including the financial data. I would like to sincerely thank the 2 guests today, the Director General, outgoing Director General, incoming Director, actually Joseph and Jan for participating to this press conference. And of course, I wish everyone a far better year than the one we had last year with successful in-flight, but also on planet Earth. Thank you very much and Happy New Year to all of you.
Goodbye.